Esteemed journalists, dear friends, may I welcome you at the Ukrainian Crisis Media Center. We are going to continue our morning of this club messages. We are going to talk about the latest events in the east of Ukraine. We are going to listen to Alexander Huk, who is a deputy SMMC mission, deputy chairman.
We're ready to listen to your report.
Okay. Greetings, ladies and gentlemen over there at the Ukraine Crisis Center in Kiev. Let me brief you on the latest development regarding the security and humanitarian situation as observed by the men and women of the OSCE Special Monitoring Mission to Ukraine. Today, I am delivering this briefing from Luhansk, the first time we are doing a briefing from Luhansk city for the UCMC in Kiev. I'm here to assess the situation, speak to key interlocutors, and of course, speak to my monitors. First of all, let me say that this week's effort in Minsk has produced a new agreement which could pave the way for durable peace in eastern Ukraine. Under the guidance of the OSCE Chief Monitor, Ambassador Apakan, participants of the Trilateral Contact Group's working group on security issues finalized their work on a long-awaited addendum to the package of measures. The addendum is a plan for the withdrawal to a distance of 15 kilometers of tanks, artillery pieces up to 100 millimeter, and mortars up to and including 120 millimeter in caliber. This withdrawal will be implemented in 2 stages. The first stage will start after 2 days of full ceasefire and will be implemented in most of the security zone in the Luhansk region. It will be implemented by weapon type, first tanks, then artillery pieces, then mortars, and all of that should take 15 days. The second stage will be implemented again by weapon type throughout the entire rest of the security zone and should take 24 days. If implemented fully and in good faith, this plan could make a significant contribution to strengthening the ceasefire. The OSCE SMM will play a supporting role through monitoring and verification within the framework of its mandate. The east of Ukraine remained relatively calm for a whole month now, with only a few ceasefire violations recorded daily in Donetsk and Luhansk regions. Most of them involve small arms fire. The use of heavy weapon observed by the SMM was largely assessed as part of training exercises. We noted these training exercises in Donetsk and a large scale in Luhansk regions on a daily basis. On 23rd September, for example, at the so-called LPR training area outside the exclusion zone in Kirlik, the SMM observed 28 main battle tanks. On the same day, while in government-controlled Novotrinske, the SMM heard 25 explosions. Ukrainian Armed Force commander there stated the firing was a training conducted near government-controlled Trochispenka. Such exercises serve as a reminder of the continuing threat of re-escalation. The volume of heavy weapons is high. On 23rd September, for example, the SMM unmanned aerial vehicle spotted 23 main battle tanks, 4 heavy artillery pieces, and 4 anti-tank guns close to so-called DPR-controlled Sontseve, and 1 main battle tank close to government-controlled Hranitne. The SMM also continued to monitor heavy weapon holding areas. The situation hasn't improved since the previous week, with weapons missing from holding areas on both sides. The training exercises and the presence of heavy weapons cause tensions and pose serious risk to civilians. Last week, it caused both death and injury and material harm. One particular sad incident happened near so-called DPR-controlled Torres on 24th September, when a 9-year-old girl was killed and a 7-year-old boy seriously injured. Various interlocutors informed the SMM that the children had been playing inside an armored personnel carrier at the military exhibition and contest. The vehicle suddenly caused fire. The cause of this tragic incident remains unclear. Live fire exercises have also been responsible for causing damage to property and endangering the lives of civilians. For example, in so-called DPR-controlled Mospine, the SMM heard from a resident that live fire exercises in the area involving mortars have damaged homes and seriously wounded an older man. In government-controlled Donetsk and Raichordorok, the residents complained to SMM about unsafe conditions around a shooting range in Donetsk and told how a stray bullet shattered the window of a kitchen while a woman there was cooking. We also continue to observe and receive reports of both military personnel and civilians being injured or killed by unexploded ordnance, landmines, and booby traps. On 24th September, residents of so-called LPR-controlled Khanivka told the SMM that they were concerned over the presence of unexploded ordnances, much of which they said was the result of live fire exercises at the LPR training range just 800 meters north of their town. There have, however, been some positive signs observed too, with some early indications that people on the ground have greater confidence in that normalization is possible. More people are returning to their homes and more businesses are reopening. Yet, the general humanitarian situation in the villages in the east remains troublesome, particularly now that winter approaches. The major concerns are the restoration of the heating systems and the affordability of fuel. Price inflation was particularly noticeable in areas not controlled by the government. The SMM in Luhansk city compared prices of basic food items and concluded that there had been, on average, a 5% increase since the start of September. The SMM is seriously concerned by the suspension of almost all humanitarian programs in Luhansk and Donetsk regions not controlled by the government. The recent decision of the so-called LPR to end United Nations and international NGO operations in the area increased protection concerns for the life of civilians, particularly those in need of essential health care and medicine. My dear friends, upon arrival here in Luhansk, I have learned that the United Nations have been allowed to return to so-called LPR-controlled areas to continue the so-called registration process regarding the delivery of humanitarian assistance. However, currently, no international humanitarian providers are accredited in the area controlled by the so-called LPR, and no aid is being delivered by international organizations and international non-governmental organizations. Within areas controlled by the so-called DPR, so far, only Médecins Sans Frontières and the ICRC are there allowed to operate. This humanitarian aid is in particular needed for isolated populations in life-threatening situations close to the contact line. Given its unique access to these locations, the SMM continues monitoring and reporting the human rights and humanitarian needs of these vulnerable groups. The SMM, not an aid organization itself, closely cooperates with other organizations such as the ICRC and the United Nations, referring information with them relevant for their humanitarian needs assessment. As well, the SMM continued to facilitate efforts by various actors to alleviate the humanitarian needs of the affected population. On 23rd September, for instance, it facilitated and monitored a local ceasefire, allowing for the repair of high voltage power lines immediately north of Luhansk city. Also, the SMM facilitated efforts for repair of an electric power station in so-called LPR-controlled Raivka and of a gas pipeline in government-controlled Krymsky. In the meantime, the SMM continued to experience difficulties in implementing its mandate. No freedom of movement restrictions or other impediments were imposed in government-controlled areas, but significant obstacles were presented in non-government controlled areas. Last week, armed LPR and DPR members denied SMM access to various locations such as a heavy weapon holding area and training grounds. Yesterday evening, at around 6 o'clock in the afternoon, I was part of a patrol of the SMM, traveling via Antratsit towards the border between Ukraine and the Russian Federation. Just slightly south of Jakove, we were stopped by LPR border guards and were prevented from reaching the international border. The unmanned aerial vehicles of the SMM, whilst flying over DPR-controlled areas, were also regularly jammed, causing loss of the video feed and hence compromising the SMM's ability to monitor in those areas. Dear friends, as usual at the end of my briefing, the update of numbers of mission members. As of this week, the SMM has 542 monitors, 71 other international staff, and 261 Ukrainian colleagues. Thank you for your attention, and I'm available now to questions, should you have any.
Thank you very much, Alexander. Are there any questions or clarifications? Чи є запитання або уточнення? Then I will have a question myself. First, what is exactly the purpose of your visit to Luhansk? As you said, you're just visiting your monitors, or is there any other intention? That's one. Two, shall we expect your next briefing from Donetsk as well via Skype?
Thank you for your question. My objective of this visit is indeed to see my monitors here who work under very difficult circumstances. I also have been visiting Antratsit, which is one of the locations in non-government controlled areas where we plan to establish further presences. I have also been attempting to reach the international border between Ukraine and the Russian Federation together with my team. And I'll also be meeting interlocutors here in the town to assess the situation here further and to address some of these concerns I have just been outlining to you before, in particular those pertaining to humanitarian issues that become ever more relevant in the advance of the colder period. I would not exclude that I will conduct one of my future briefings to you and the colleagues there in Kiev from another locations other than Kiev.
And another clarification for me, you have updated us on your mission strength. What is the division between the monitors on Ukrainian side and on the sides of the so-called DPR and LPR? Is it equal, like 50-50, or is there a difference?
Just to be very clear, all our monitors, the over 500, are deployed on Ukrainian territory, be it government-controlled or non-government controlled. In the eastern part, we split and keep a balance between operating on areas not controlled by the government and operating on areas controlled by the government. And we continue to increase the numbers of our monitors in both areas.
Okay, thank you very much. I have no further questions, and there are no more questions from the audience. So thank you very much, and we'll look forward to your next report.
Thank you very much. Have a good day. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.